Hey, everybody. I'm Conor McCreery, the creator of The Last Witch, and you are listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Conor McCreery about The Last Witch and more at the 2022 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Based in Toronto, Ontario, Conor is the swashbuckling wordsmith behind the Kill Shakespeare series for IDW, Adventure Time regular show for Boom, Assassin's Creed for Titan Comics, and much more. A former journalist who worked on 3 continents, Conor's newest projects are a magic realism comics biography of the legendary Fela Kuti, Music as a Weapon, for Amistad Press, the coming-of-age story Status, written with his wife Crystal Luxmore for Scholastic, and the multimedia science fiction story world Future Now for Embriate Productions. His most recent series is The Last Witch for Boom. The Last Witch begins as the one time of the year when the witch known as Kaliach hunts the children of the village. So Saoirse, a brave and reckless young girl, decides this is the perfect opportunity to defy her father and discover the secrets of the witch's tower. But when Kaliach captures Saoirse and her brother Brom, their lives are forever changed in ways they never expected. Now Saoirse will have to save everyone she loves by discovering the truth about the mysterious mark on her shoulder and embracing her secret magical powers. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Conor McCreery about The Last Witch and more at the 2022 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Conor McCreery, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, thanks, John. I've always got time for True North.
Well, thank you. Very good. Before we get started, though, want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
Oh, man, what is on my bedside reading table? 2 things. One is Corto Maltese, the reprint of the classic Italian comic books that IDW put out. Corto Maltese is kind of this ex-military, almost buccaneer type character, and it's all kind of set in turn of the century, so like early 19th century, or I guess technically early 20th century, in the early 1900s, and it's created by Hugo Pratt, and it's a great black and white adventure series, and it's just kind of fun. It's interesting to watch how European comics work, and it's interesting to see how just a different style of storytelling, both from the time period, because they were drawn, oh gosh, I want to say that in the 60s or something, but also again that European influence. And I've also got the graphic novel Click by Kyla Miller on my bedside table, which is an all ages book. And I've been reading that because my wife and I are writing an all-ages project for Scholastic right now.
Very good. So giving you some inspiration there, I guess.
Yeah, just kind of, I read a bunch of them. I've got a couple of young children, so I've been reading a lot of those to them. But
sure,
I definitely wanted to kind of, you want to get yourself familiar with the language of that age group. That's not to be confused with the comic book series Click by Milo Manara. That would be very different.
So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and I understand you're an exhibitor this year. So with that in mind, I want to first ask you, do you have any favorite convention moments that you can share?
Oh, boy. I think the ones that stick with me, I had one in Calgary where a couple come by with a little guy, he's probably 3 years old, maybe 4. I don't think he was quite that old. And he loved to say, ridiculous. And so every time he came by the table, he'd look at me and he'd point and he'd go, ridiculous. And I'd look back at him and I'd say, ridiculous. And it was this game, and they were there for all 4 days of the show. So probably 5 or 6 times a day, they, you know how it is at a con. You work the circle, and this little guy would come by and point his hand at me and go, ridiculous. And it was, so I love those kind of things, right? This time I was just actually at a Calgary show a week ago, and again, it was a little baby, newborn. I've got an all ages book, so now I'm interacting with kids a lot more. And so I have a lot of fun with that, like explaining a story to a kid and watching them watching as their eyes light up as they get excited by the idea is so much fun. But I guess the other one that happened, I think this was where you and I saw each other, the last Toronto show of probably a month and a half, 2 months ago. I've got a little guy, a part of my group, he was 17 months, 16 months at the show.
Okay.
And he saw Stormtrooper for the first time. And he runs around. So he was running around the show, and we're like trying to hold him because he's like 1.5 feet tall, if that, right? So nobody's looking for this little guy who's steadily whipping around left, right, and center. But he saw the Stormtrooper and he stopped dead. And then the Stormtrooper kind of waved him in, and my wife was kind of taking photos, and it's like this stop motion of this little guy who gets a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. And then finally he reached out and touched the Stormtrooper, which I thought was pretty hilarious. So
wow,
that was a fun moment. But I think in general, honestly, John, and this is good, it'll sound corny, but it's talking with people. And I think what I love about Comic-Cons, not only are you going to talk about your favorite nerdy stuff, right? It's a chance for you to nerd out with people who have the same interests. But comics people are smart, interesting people. I have been in so many interesting, strange conversations that you would never think you would get into at a comic convention. Everything from politics to people you barely know telling you about their lives, like stuff that really matters. It's and I just love how open people are at cons and how trusting the environment is. And I always say, a Comic-Con, no matter where it is pretty much the only place you can go in the world where there's going to be 15, 30,000 people, and all of them are going to be nice. And so, yeah, that's what I've really enjoyed, is just getting back and talking to people.
Right. Now, I guess this is a moot question, but I'm wondering what is it like to be going back? I mean, we've been secluded for the most part of the last 2 years in our homes because of the pandemic, and you're now starting to get out. You just mentioned you were at a convention, and we met up at the Toronto Comic-Con. What is it like going back to festivals and conventions? Do you have any concerns at all?
I mean, I think the Toronto one a little bit, right? I mean, I'm triple vaxxed. Toronto was a show you masked. In Calgary, it was more mixed. I actually me and my family actually got COVID about 6 weeks ago, and thankfully because we're all thank you. But thankfully because we're all the kids are double vaxxed. My wife and I are triple vaxxed. It was actually really minor. It was not even as like my daughter actually has like a good old fashioned cold right now. And she was in way more distress now with her cold than she was with COVID, which she barely noticed she had. So I think that's obviously taken a bit of the edge off, knowing that I'm triple vaxxed and I did have a mild case. Like my chances of infecting or being infected are low. But I think Toronto, I definitely had a bit of concern. I think what really the biggest thing was just, it was like remembering how to talk with people.
Right. Yeah.
And one thing I think at the last couple shows, I think people have been extra outgoing. Like I think people are, I don't want to say oversharing because I don't like that term. I think people, they share what they share, but I definitely think people have been more forthcoming about all sorts of stuff, because I think, we've all been talking with the same 8 or 10 people. And so all of a sudden you're in this world and you start chatting with someone and you're having a nice conversation and yeah, people are they're more forthcoming about what's going on in their life, what they like, what they don't like, how they're feeling. And I'm the kind of person who likes that, so that part, it's just been enjoying that. And yeah, learning how to talk to people again. It's amazing how that skill goes.
Sure. And I'm sure a lot of people that are convention goers, festival goers, are eager to see new things, that you're offering and want to learn more about it. And with that in mind, I wonder if you could talk a wee bit about what you'll be showcasing at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival.
Oh, for sure. I'm really excited to be bringing my new all ages book, The Last Witch, to the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. I like to call it Irish Avatar with just the right amount of child cannibalism at the beginning.
Oh no!
It is actually an all ages book. It is still, I read it to my 8 and 6-year-old. It's very much in the vein of something like The Secret of Nim or The Dark Crystal. The original Brothers Grimm fairy tales. It's just scary enough, I hope, that if you're a younger reader, you'll you'll be kind of wondering, like, is everything going to be okay? If your parents are reading it to you, the bed covers come up a little bit, but then when mom or dad is like, "Are you sure? Do you want me to stop?" They drop down and like, "No, no, don't stop."
Right.
And it's illustrated by VV Glass,
Mm-hmm.
who's kind of a newcomer to the industry, but their work, for those who've seen the comic, will vouch for it. Their work is extraordinary. It's such a beautiful book, and I'm very proud of the story. And it's book one of a 2-book series. We're just starting on book 2. Actually, right about later this week, or actually, I guess probably next week now. We'll see the first pages starting to come out. So I'm very excited to show that, and then I'll also have some of my old favorites. I'll still have the Kill Shakespeare books. For people who've been reading the series and want to get the latest one. I'll probably have a couple of my old books. I've got the Assassin's Creed series that I wrote for,
Right,
and also Sherlock Holmes versus Harry Houdini. Probably everything but Adventure Time regular show, which I can't get right now.
Right.
But other than that, I'll try to bring a little bit of everything, and I'm hoping that one of my a friend of mine who I'm working on a book with, I'm hoping he's going to come one day and maybe bring a little bit of art from the new book we're working on as well.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too about these events. I know we talked about, attendees and getting to interact with them, but it's also about interacting with colleagues, fellow creators, that type of thing, sharing ideas, is it not?
Oh, for sure. I mean, from the show I just went to in Calgary, it was pretty fun because a whole bunch of us went out and we went to an arcade and we played pinball and video games and people caught up and chatted and we climbed on a giant metal horse and we did karaoke to Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm pretty sure I heard Freddie Mercury yelling, "Please, please stop" from the grave.
Oh no.
I don't want to say we were in tune. I think that would be inaccurate. But yeah, it's great. It's great to meet, especially when you do shows that are, when it's in your hometown, it's great because you can kind of show people around a little bit and take them to a favorite spot. And when you're on the road, it's fun because, it's you and a bunch of other people that you either know or have just met. And it's sort of like, yeah, well, I got to have dinner with somebody. So let's go out and do something. And for sure. And, and sometimes, you get those seeds of ideas or collaborations start at these things as well, which is really cool.
And I guess you get to see their creations as well, their artwork or their certain projects they have in the go, and you're fascinated by that because 9 times out of 10 you don't get that when you're sitting at your home, and this is a chance to get out and actually interact with those people.
For sure. I mean, it's great to always, you get inspired by what other people are working on, and I really love to I also really love to just watch to see how do people set up their booths, how are they selling things, like how do they approach people, what ideas do they have, because as much as being a creator, you're also an entrepreneur, really, right? And so you kind of look around people to just kind of see what they do, whether it's creatively or how they sell things or just how they interact with people. It's always really interesting to learn and see, because there's so many different ways to make people passionate about your work. I always wish I was an artist. I always wish I could be one of those people who could just draw someone a great sketch. And so I love doing that. I love watching, friends of mine or people I meet at shows and peeking over it and seeing as a commission like springs out of their mind and onto the page. I mean, I'm in awe of that.
I know this isn't the same case, but Tom King, who's a writer for DC, often will get those blank covers and for his books or whatever book, and he'll actually draw a stick figure. Like he knows he's not an artist, but he just does it for the fun of it to say, okay, here you go.
I do. It's funny. Somebody came up to me at the Calgary show, and he was like, "Oh, I'm getting all the artists to draw. I'm getting everybody to draw something in my sketchbook." Which artists are sometimes they're a little in the middle of that, right? Some people don't mind doing a quick one. Some people are like, you're kind of asking me to do for free what that like I do charge for, but nobody wants to be the person who's like, no, I'm not going to draw in your sketchbook. So I was like, oh yeah, sure. And I do a stick figure that I call Space Spear, where it's like a stick figure of Shakespeare, and I give him like an old fashioned like space helmet, like diving helmet, and then there's like a little string that connects to a really badly drawn spaceship. And I draw a couple stars and a moon that always looks horrible. And I do a little Shakespeare quote. So I did that, and I signed it Space Spear. And the guy looked at it, and he just kind of like winced. And he kind of looked at me, and you could tell he wanted to be like, he couldn't tell he wanted to be like, hey, don't be a jerk, and like if you can draw something real, or maybe this guy isn't very good. Like you could tell he didn't really know which way to go on it. And I don't think he was looking at my table and seeing the Kill Shakespeare books either. So I think the whole thing was just like confusing and like vaguely offensive for him. So that was a fun time too.
Well, maybe that's an idea for a new story for you. You never know.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. A guy who gets hunted down by a really angry sketch character or sketch collector.
and Space Spear is the guy behind it. You know.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. So we've talked about a couple of things right now about festivals, conventions you've attended. Any plans for other festivals or conventions for later on this year?
Oh, for sure. I mean, staying in Toronto, I can't wait for the Toronto Fan Expo show at the end of the summer. That's always one of my favorite, being a local guy. I'm actually going to be going to, for the first time, to the St. Louis Expo in a couple of weeks, which is really cool. I'm going to be at TCAF, as you know. I've just heard I got accepted to the American Library Arts Festival.
Wow, that's nice.
Which is a great one down in Washington. Yeah. And that's like, that's, for me, I love that because, I mean, librarians, it's all librarians. You get a chance to talk with librarians and they're obviously can be really key in getting a book into libraries and even schools. So that's one I really enjoy. And then I'm hoping in the fall, I'm doing a bunch, I guess, just, with a new book and also with having been kind of roped up for so long. Hopefully New York Comic Con, hopefully Edmonton, hopefully Vancouver, I guess like at the very end of the year, New Year. And then fingers crossed, I'll go to the Miami Book Fair and maybe a new festival out east. There's a new festival getting launched out east. So I'm hoping to do about 10 shows this year because, it's been a while since I've been on the road and you kind of don't want to disappear. And, you also, with new books, you want to get them to people's hands and get them excited. So when you're back the next season, and I miss it a little bit. Well, talk to me in the fall or something after, after Edmonton, and we'll see if I'm still as excited to do the shows. But right now, I am. I'm excited to get on the road. The only thing that's too bad is just, my wife and I, we've got 3 kids, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and about a almost 20-month-old now. And it's just too bad because, I wish we could all go on the road together. And maybe in a couple of years that'll be a little easier, but it does kind of stink to be away from the family. And, it's, not for nothing. It's tough on my, it's not easy for my wife to be single parenting 3 kids either. So that you sometimes feel a little bad about, but especially when you're out and about playing video games and singing Bohemian Rhapsody, and then you suddenly get a text from your wife being like, one of the kids threw up, and you're like, so sad I'm not there, but not really.
Oh, no. Well, it sounds like you're going to be really busy this year. So I'm wondering, do you have a website that you recommend that people go to find out about your current and your future plans?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the best place to find me is myself and Anthony Delcall, who I do Kill Shakespeare with. We have a website, killshakespeare.com. And then you can also find me on Twitter, Conor McCreery, so CONORMCCREERY. And once you've got that, you can find me on Facebook. We have a Kill Shakespeare Facebook page, but most of my updates or when I share artwork and stuff is mostly through Facebook, Twitter, or on my Instagram, The Real Conor. And those are kind of the best places along with the Kill Shakespeare website.
Super. Well, Conor, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Oh, I mean, not a ton. I mean, I think the only thing I guess I would say is just for people who are kind of wondering what I'm up to next. So, we are working on the next book of The Last Witch. I'm also doing an all ages book with my wife called Status. I'll be giving more details soon, but that's something where we've almost finished the script. So that's very exciting. And I'm hoping, I don't know if I'll have these ready for TCAF, but I've been working on sort of a weird horror comedy series called Trickster, which is kind of like a modern day fantasy with a Robin Hood-esque character and lots of monsters. So I'm hoping I'll have the first issue of that at TCAF as well. And so I think, also if you're following me, if you're a fan of music, I'm working on a really interesting music comic about a guy named Fela Kuti, who I like to call the Bob Marley of Africa. Except if Bob Marley had 27 wives, was arrested 200 times, and had 2,000 soldiers try to assassinate him. That's the story of Bela Kuti.
Thanks to Conor for the chat. You can discover more about Conor on Twitter at Conor McCreery, on Instagram at TheRealConor, and online at killshakespeare.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.